Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a really complex and, honestly, a deeply personal issue: bullying. We're going to look at what it is, who it affects, and most importantly, what we can all do about it.
Imagine being a little sheep named Otelia and hearing words like that every single day. See, she was a bit rounder than the other sheep, and that one little difference made her a target. Her story might be fictional, but the feeling behind it is incredibly real for so many kids.
And her story is way more common than you might think. We're talking about a widespread reality. Get this. In the United States, a staggering 1 in 5 students says they've been bullied. Just think about that for a second. In an average classroom, that's probably several kids who are dealing with this day in and day out.
Yeah, for way too long, bullying was just kind of brushed off as kids being kids or a part of growing up. But we know better now. The research, the personal stories, they all prove it's so much more than that. So to really get a handle on it, we have to start by understanding what it actually is, and just as important, what it isn't.
Okay, so this brings us to a really crucial first step. We need a clear definition. Because, when you can name something properly, you can actually start to deal with it effectively.
So what's really interesting here is how experts boil it all down. This isn't just random meanness. Real bullying has 3 key ingredients. First, there's the intent to hurt someone. Second, it's not a one-time thing. There's repetition. And third, and this one is super important, there's a power imbalance. The person on the receiving end feels like they can't make it stop.
And this, right here, illustrates the difference perfectly. A fight between 2 friends who have equal power, that's not bullying, that's a conflict. A single mean comment, also not bullying. Bullying is that relentless, targeted pattern where one person is systematically made to feel small and powerless by another. Getting this distinction helps us know how to respond.
So now that we have a pretty solid definition, let's look at the different ways bullying can actually show up. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all thing, and recognizing its different forms is key to spotting it when it's happening.
Sources pretty consistently point to 4 main types. You've got physical, which is the most obvious one, hitting, shoving, breaking someone's stuff. Then there's verbal. That's what our little sheep Otelia went through, all the name-calling and threats. Social bullying is a little sneakier. This is about ruining someone's reputation, spreading rumors, or deliberately leaving them out. And then, of course, there's cyberbullying, which takes all of this online, where it can spread like wildfire and just live forever.
But here's the thing, a bullying situation is hardly ever just a 2-person drama. It's more like a performance with an audience, which brings us to the really complex group dynamics that are at play.
So in any bullying incident, you've basically got 3 roles: the person being targeted, the person doing the bullying, and the witnesses, the ones who see it all go down. Now what's fascinating is that the witnesses are almost always the biggest group, and in a lot of ways, they hold all the power to completely change the outcome just by choosing not to be silent. So this all leads to a really fundamental question, right? Why? Why do some people bully in the first place? And look, understanding the reasons isn't about making excuses, not at all. It's about getting to the root of the problem, which is absolutely the first step toward preventing it. And it's almost never simple. Sometimes it's about social status, trying to seem powerful or popular to fit in. Other times, it can be rooted in what's going on at home. Maybe there's not a lot of support, or they're seeing aggression modeled there. It can also come from their own emotional struggles, like insecurity or even having been bullied themselves. It's a really complex behavior with some deep roots.
All right, so how can you tell if a child is caught up in this, either as the one being targeted or maybe as the one doing the targeting? Well, the signs are usually there if you know what you're looking for.
For someone who's being bullied, the signs can show up in a lot of different ways. You might see physical things, like unexplained bruises, or emotional stuff, like a sudden fear of going to school, their grades dropping, or pulling away from their friends. Big changes in how they eat or sleep, and a noticeable dip in their self-esteem are also huge red flags.
And on the flip side, a child who is doing the bullying might show different signs. Things like getting into more fights, hanging out with other kids who bully, becoming more aggressive. Or maybe they're constantly blaming other people for their own problems or just intensely focused on their popularity.
Okay, so recognizing the problem is step 1, but that's not enough. The most important part of this whole conversation is figuring out how to actually take action and make a real difference.
One of the best ways to teach empathy, that ability to really understand how someone else is feeling, is with this simple but incredibly powerful activity. So just imagine, you start with a perfect smooth paper heart. And with every single insult, bull balloon, you're weird, nobody likes you,
We just crumple the heart a little bit. Every time someone is left out, every nasty rumor, it adds another fold, another crease. So what happens when you try to smooth it back out? You can say you're sorry, you can say you didn't mean it, but the paper is never, ever the same. The wrinkles, those scars, they're still there. It's a perfect visual for the damage that's been done.
And that's the whole lesson of The Wrinkled Heart, and it's a profound one. Our words, our actions, they have a lasting impact. They leave these marks that are so incredibly difficult, maybe even impossible, to ever fully erase.
So the real question is, how do we give kids a tool to stop this from happening in the first place? Well, this THINK acronym is a fantastic filter. Before you say something, just quickly ask yourself, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it important? Is it necessary? And maybe most importantly, is it kind? If the answer to any of those is no, maybe it's better to just not say it.
And this idea brings us right back to that role of the witness. The goal is to turn passive bystanders into active upstanders. An upstander doesn't just watch it happen. They stand up. They might say something, they might support the person being targeted, or they might just go get help from an adult. They completely change the dynamic of the whole situation.
You know, in Otilia's story, her classmates had no idea she had a medical condition. They just saw someone who looked different, and they judged her for it. But when they learned her story, everything shifted, from ridicule to empathy. It's such a good reminder that behind every single person, there's a story we know nothing about. So the challenge, for all of us, is to choose curiosity over judgment, and to actively decide to be the person who helps, not the one who hurts.